Hey, this is Jeff Karras, your behavior guy. I'm back. So yesterday we talked about just some back to school organizational structure things that educators could do when they're setting up rooms. And then we talked about some expectations that are great for educators to think about as they start the year and for parents to think about too and to know so they can help support that. So the other part of that, when I would go in and observe classrooms, I would be looking for certain things that happen in the room. So I would want to know that the teacher is visible. I would want to know that the expectations are understood so students know the expectation, and even parents at home, when you're teaching your child the expectation, have them say it back to you and verbalize it to make sure they understood what you were trying to say, because sometimes children won't take the same message that we want to deliver. We also want to make sure that there's the clear expectations and there's reinforcement used, right? So what are we doing to reinforce? Are we praising? We should be praising our students and children more than we're redirecting them, right? So try to make a point to give that praise. And these are all things that I would have them think about. Also, when we're thinking about consequences, right? At home and at school, it's good to have like a continuum. So before students come back, teachers, think of the continuum, right? Because we're not going to just jump to the most serious consequence right away. We might do some redirection. We might do some reteaching. We might eventually increase that consequence. And that's good at home to know too, because when you're giving consequences, if you jump to the most severe and jump right down their throat, you don't have anywhere to go from there, right? So you need to start with a continuum and think, how are you going to address children when there's needs to be a redirection? We also want to make sure that there's good monitoring going on, right? So whenever I look in a class, I'm making sure our students monitor, because when they're not, then something has a much better chance of happening. So we want to have that visibility. So like I said, we talked about the structure, but then it's also the adult behaviors that I'm looking at, because students, they're going to take that lead. And if you do some certain things to set up a class, you can have a better chance at having the expectations followed. Also, we want to make sure that there's not a lot of downtime in a classroom, right? And we want our children and students to know when they're done doing something, what do they do? So if you give a child a task, say, hey, and when you're finished, here's what you can do. Otherwise, they're going to find something to do, and it might not be what you want them to do. And we want to make sure that they're engaged and they have an opportunity to respond, that there's high rates of response going on. I'm going to post up a document for you a little later that has kind of these bulleted that you can think about for educators and parents. You can see what us as educators think about and use that at home. This is Jeff Karras, your behavior guy. I'll see you later.